Huh? No,
It's
just
just.
real humid.
They were saying like up to 50 mile an hour today.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Thanks, Jeff. Sorry, I didn't mean to pull you out. Well, I just wanted those guys to come in and say hi.
Okay.
We need more of that.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
All right, and we're back. Sorry for the delay, gang. Anyway, Judy, if you want to, you through folding your laundry? We can go ahead and get
That's a
started.
never-ending story, right? Okay, so we are looking at, we talked a little bit about the correction fees. So it's more or less of an in and out. That was fund number 201. And then we'll move on to SGRT, which is fund 202. This is the fund that is allocated the special 1% GRT tax for water infrastructure projects. In addition, it does receive 25% of the environmental gross receipts tax from our GRT. So this is where a lot of our water infrastructure projects are occurring. This is more or less handled like a capital improvement fund. It does have two departments. One department is titled Watershed, which is 205. And then the other department is number 211, which is just regular water infrastructure projects. So in the current year, in the Watershed department, there's a project for Wingfield Park drainage that is currently budgeted at 260, and with a portion, an additional 60,000 under the SGRT department number 211 for a total project cost of 320,000. I believe Eric Boyda's on the line. If you would like to give a little explanation of what that project would entail, Eric?
Sure. Mayor Crawford, councilors. So the use of the environmental GRT for Wingfield is going to be for doing the stormwater infiltration sites and running the water that's gathering on Center Street across the north side of the park and infiltrating it at various spots in the park. And then the portion out of the water section for SGRT, that's going to be for a rainwater catchment system. So we're going to look at setting up a catchment system off of the pavilion there, the picnic shelter. And that's going to be a below ground cistern system. And then we're going to have a demonstration above ground one off of the small restrooms there so that we can show people how to utilize rainwater harvest systems to irrigate landscaping.
So if we move on to Department 211, you'll see that there's several other expenditures that come out of those funds. In particular, there is some money set aside for a water conservation program in the amount of 25,000. This is also where we pay a lot of our water right leases. Currently in account number 52041, there's 75,000. That's for a Dunnigan lease in the amount of 21,860, and then the irrevocable trust at 53,600. If you're looking at the current budget, you'll see that there's a budget of 2.6 million. We have been saving for several years now in anticipation that we might have to buy the CGIM's water rights lease. So in July, I will actually roll over that 2.6 million if we ever get notice that to purchase the water rights, right? Eric, did I say that right?
Yeah, so right now, we're just waiting for the Office of the State Engineer to issue our final permits for our water right leases, and the obligation to acquire water rights was from our preliminary authorization to use that lease water. And so the OSC hasn't given us indication that they would carry that into the final permit. And so once we get those permits in hand, then we'll release those funds and likely do some water line replacement or other projects, water related projects with the 2.6 million.
So going forward, some of the other additional projects that are currently budgeted in this SGRT portion of this fund, we currently have the Eagle Creek Phase 2, or Phase 3, I'm sorry, budgeted at 1.5 million. There's a risk and resiliency project at 150,000. USR additional of 450, and a water master plan at 200,000. So if you'd like to expand on those, Eric, be my guest.
Sure. So the risk and resiliency assessment is a thing that we're doing as part of an obligation for EPA regulations. And that's where we're doing a comprehensive evaluation of the security and resiliency of the water utility. And from that plan, we'll probably have a list of projects to improve our safety. And so I just set aside 150 as just a placeholder because we don't actually have that plan done, but I wanted to get started on those projects right as soon as we identify them. The water master plan, we really discussed that thoroughly in the last council meeting, but that water master plan is going to be valuable in getting us a comprehensive capital improvement plan, which is going to help us make sure our capital investments are strategic and that we're investing in the appropriate spots. The underground storage and recovery, based on the discussions that we've been having with the state, we're going to have to add another monitoring well. And then because of the volatility of the markets now for construction activities, we wanted to make sure we had adequate budget for that study. Let's see. And then for the Phase 3 of the Eagle Creek well field, that would be connecting the two wells that are further downstream than the Alto 2. So if you guys remember going and hiking down below Alto Reservoir, and then there's that waterfall by the bridge, there's two wells that is just right upstream of that waterfall. So we would look at putting those two wells online. And once we have those online, then our Eagle Creek well field should be in a pretty good, stable spot.
Moving forward in this fund, we do have some interest on some debt. The way the debt was structured, you'll see in the current year that we paid some principal amount in the amount of 235,000. The way this debt was structured, we have 10 years left on this debt, and for some reason, the way they structure the debt is that we're paying principal every other year. So in some of our other bond issuances, you'll see that we pay principal and interest each year, but for some reason, this SGRT debt, for some reason, we're paying principal every other year. So we won't have a principal this payment in 22, but we'll have a double payment in 2023. And then, of course, the last fund expenditure would be just the administrative admin fees based on revenues. So if you have
What
any
is
other
that percentage, Judy, for
10,
10?
10,
Okay.
and that would be it all for SGRT, unless you have any other questions. If not, we'll move on to the Emergency Medical Services Special Revenue Fund. On this fund, this is also an in and out. They get a state grant. It usually runs around 11,000 each year. We get an allotment each year. And it is used on safety equipment and some travel in schools. So it's a smaller fund, but it's still under the control of Cody, Fire Chief Cody Thedford. Any questions on that one?
Nope.
Nope.
So now we'll go to Fund 207, which is the CERF, or the Capital Equipment Replacement Fund. Right now, we just have the funds coming in from the general fund. I haven't allocated any of the capital outlay to this account yet. But once we all make a decision, in the end, I will actually move a lot of the outlay requests from the general fund to this fund. So right now, we're just budgeting an increase of 500,000. At the end of March, we have $1.8 million in this fund with outstanding purchase orders of about 240. So probably by the end of the year, we'll have about 1.6 million left over to roll over for capital outlay requests. Any questions?
Mayor,
Yes.
I think it's important that we, identify those capital outlay requests that we have. And I think is that what you intended to use that other spreadsheet for, Judy?
I can't hear you. It's a little muffled.
Yeah, my mic was muted. But,
Oh.
Judy, did you intend to use that other spreadsheet you had with the capital outlay request to roll it over to this fund?
Yes, you mean the capital outlay for the police and the bucket truck?
Yes.
Yes, I usually just put the requisitions, on the first go around. I leave them in the departments, and then I will actually move those outlays out of the general fund and actually expense them out in the SURF.
Okay, and I'm just bringing that up because, as we look back at the general fund, we had basically a 1.7, spending out of the cash balances. And as you, part of that was a transfer into this fund. So as you take those expenditures out of the general and move them in here, it's going to reduce down that 1.7.
You are absolutely correct. Any more questions on the SURF? This has been a really successful fund. We have purchased a lot of equipment, trucks. As you recall, last year, a lot of the streets equipment was bought out of these funds. And the reason the balance has grown over the years is, in the past, this was started prior to me getting to Rio Doso. And sometimes we would allocate, they were allocating 500,000 or 750, and a lot of times there wasn't a lot of capital outlay requests that used up the funds. So anything that was not used in one budget year just kept rolling over to the next year, and that's how the balance has been building up.
Mayor, Council, on this fund, I think it's important that we have some type of triggers or, checks and balances so that you all know, what type of purchases are being made out of once we put the money in here. We're establishing budget authority, but would you be comfortable with everything over 10,000, 20,000? I think previously, they went with a manager's limit of 60,000. How would you all like that handled? Would you just like an FYI up to a certain amount, or?
Well, I think at the very least, we'd like to know, because like the Suburban and Tahoe we hadn't heard one thing about that, but yet other departments have to beg, borrow, and steal to get them, you know, so I'd just like us to be made aware, it may have been approved, but we'd like to know what it's being spent on.
I
So-
would like to know.
I guess over 10,000, is that too low?
Well, I think
That's
that
pretty
you know, when that got changed there, that it was a 14,000, it would come to council, anything above that, but I believe after the flood and all of the projects that they had going on, that they felt that it was too much, they needed to get things rolling. That's why they went ahead and upped the amount to 60,000 so that they could go ahead and move forward on these different projects as far as the flood and,
Well, that's why we gave the manager the authority for 60.
that was a long time.
Yeah, but I mean, they can still do that, but we still like to be notified what they're
Yeah,
buying.
yeah, but they didn't need our approval.
Huh?
They didn't need our approval then.
They still don't need our approval.
I know that, but I think that's what he's wanting to have.
No, that's not what he's asking. He said
wanting to
FYI.
notify us.
Oh, did you want us to approve everything?
Well, a lot of things we do put on your agenda, under the 60 more for transparency reasons. But I'm just, trying to get some guidance. Do you want us to send you an FYI for anything up to 60,000? Or do you want us to put it on the agenda if it's out of this fund? Because it's basically establishing authority once you set that money in here.
I don't know. What do you want to do? Joe?
Oh, me? Oh, I'm just trying to give a little history on it, but,
Yeah.
that's where it came from.
Do you have a preference?
But-
I mean, we established the authority so that things wouldn't get bottlenecked. But there are things that have happened that we didn't know anything about it, that the money had been approved. And, and it's hard to answer to other departments when they're been trying to get a vehicle and then we get two new vehicles that we knew nothing about. And then we find out there's other ones that certain departments get. So I don't know. I just would like to know what we're spending the money on.
Mayor, what I would suggest is maybe up to 30,000, we'll send you an FYI out of this fund. And if it's over that, then we'd put it on the agenda.
Okay.
If it varies
Are
from,
y'all okay?
if it varies from what's approved in the budget authority.
Too much.
Mayor Tim, perhaps it could be incorporated into your manager's report.
Yes, on the manager's, we can include it on the manager's report and the FYIs. And then, oftentimes we just roll the information from the FYI into the monthly report. So, we can handle it that way just to keep you all informed.
Well, like John said here, we don't want to get in a position where we're holding things up to
Exactly.
go to a monthly meeting, or we have to have a special meeting to approve some sort of a purchase on the capital equipments whenever you've already got, like, streets, $315,000, and that's for that.
Okay.
I
So
wouldn't,
if anything varies from what you all approve, or it's, if we have that budget authority and we have additional requests, we'll handle it with an FYI
okay.
and make sure that you're all informed, and then we'll incorporate it into the manager's report.
I feel better. That's okay.
Yeah.
That works.
And we get the FYI, if there's any questions, put it on the agenda.
Well,
Yes,
The
Judy?
activity of the SURF is in your monthly report.
Judy, we're gonna, address the procedure within an admin reg. So we'll adjust
Sure.
the admin reg for the FY and the monthly report, so.
Which report? The financial report?
Uh-huh.
Well, sometimes, when I got somebody that's really barking at my tree, I just inundate them with so much information that they can't really find what they think, they can't find what I don't want them to. So sometimes I get overwhelmed with the information, so I think if it was just, he put it in his manager's report or a FYI that we're gonna buy that and still be in the financial report, then, that wouldn't be too much
Yeah.
information where we could at least see it and I could go find it then.
And just real quick, Mayor, if I may, the FYIs are more for, we're gonna give you this information before the weekend so that if you get hit on the street,
Right.
what happened here, that's kind of the purpose of the FYI. The manager's report is more of a detailed report of what's going on. So, it's kind of a judgment call that we're using on the FYIs of, the directors, if something happened that you think the council's gonna get hit, during the weekend or during the week, to say, what's going on here, we want to try to keep you informed.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's great.
Okay. We'll incorporate that into our admin regs and make sure that we're following that procedure. I think a lot of those items, when we do push them to the council agenda, it's more for transparency reasons. so.
I agree. Okay,
Moving on is that okay to move on?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're gonna move to Fund 209, which is the Fire Marshal Fund. We talked a little bit about it this morning, when we talked about the fire department and the general fund. And you'll see that, we get an allotment each year, of,
488.
oh, I have to change the amount. Can you tell me that amount again, Cody?
488.
So I need to increase the revenues, and of course, they do pay some fire prevention supplies out of it, and there is debt service payment that will be taken off the top, but most of the monies we're trying to reserve in order for him to save for fire truck.
And you were right, Judy. Actually, the application will show the 3 whatever, but because of our ISO, once the funding goes out, it will end up being 488.
Oh, okay. Any questions on the fire marshal fund? If not, we'll go ahead and move on to 211, which is the Law Enforcement Protection Fund. Now, this is an allotment from the state. It's based on a set dollar amount and like $600 per certified officer. So we have been allotted or awarded $32,000 in funding. And so right now, the new chief is currently looking at their needs. Some of the different areas that you can use to, these funds are for training of certified officers and some safety equipment. They are actually going through an inventory of all their equipment, and as soon as he determines what the needs are for the department, we'll actually allocate the monies to the corresponding expense line items. But right now, just to get this balanced, we actually just put all the 32,000 in a contingency line that he can do budget adjustments out to the corresponding line items.
So is this the fund we get from the state on our certified officers for each one, $600 or whatever we have? Okay.
Yes, that is correct. And then the next fund is the special library. I don't have any new grants for them. So you'll see that there's nothing budgeted. I will be rolling over any grants that they currently have that they didn't finish using out at the end of June. So that fund is usually a rollover. If we move on to the next fund is lodger's tax. We currently have lodger's tax revenues budgeted at 1.6 million. And as you know, we've already met our budget for the current year. Our current year receipts total around 1.7 million already. So we felt that a 1.6 would be a reasonable budgeted amount for expenditures. Going forward, as you know, we try to divide expenditures between 2 categories. Department 165, which is promotional, or expenditures tied with getting people heads in beds. I don't know if you've heard the little phrase. And then we also have another department called 166, which is for non-promotional, which is usually for expenses tied with our tourist facilities. But if
Judy,
you look at, yes?
before you move on to revenues, that 1.7, that's as of March, is that correct? You still have a quarter left, 3 months to report?
When I ran this report on 4/27, that's what the year-to-date through April 27th was. But I'm not sure if all the April receipts are in there, so I probably have a couple more days plus, May and June.
Yeah, and, Judy, on the reports that I've been tracking, it looks like, we were, right about 300,000 short of hitting 2 million. So I think it was 3 months reporting. So
Oh, okay.
By the calculations that I've kept track of, it looks like we're gonna hit just over 2 million in lodger's tax. So the 1.6 is a conservative, revenue.
And I would, this is Justin, and I would say just, speaking with lodgers and stuff, they're having a historic April. So just looking at April, May, and June, it looks like we definitely have a very good potential of hitting that 2 million. So I would agree with you completely, Tim.
So going forward, at the last lodgers tax, meeting, for the most part, we increased the budget on marketing. We kept all the other contracts the same, but there was an increase in special events. In order to try to attract some new events, they did recommend an increase to 100,000. If you have any, Tim or Justin, if you want to make any comments on that amount?
Just with the what the Lodgers Tax Board felt was with the impact that the special event organizers have felt over the past year due to the pandemic, and particularly because a lot of them are nonprofit organizations, that it would be vital for our tourism economy to be able to provide enough support to these event organizers to encourage them to continue hosting their events in our community, and also to hopefully attract new event organizers to our community, and ensure that we continue filling those shoulder weekends with these events. So that was the thought behind increasing that. Historically, we had been around the $50,000 mark, if I remember correctly. Yeah, about 45, 50 grand. We had cut that down a little bit in the past, but with this fiscal, we thought it was very important to support those as much as we could to help sustain those events so that we don't feel the impact to our tourism economy.
Going forward to Department 166, this is where the host compliance software renewal is, at $50,000. And again, we had talked about the police overtime. We have included some capital outlay. There is a mobile stage, costed out at $158,000, plus the corresponding lighting package at $66,021. So the total capital outlay request out of this fund would be $224,021, and you'll see it in account number 214-166-53001. It also has a debt service payment for the convention center remodel. And that's at $115,000, and it also does pay an administrative fee to the general fund in the amount, I believe, year before last, they raised it from 5 to 10%. Are there any questions on the lodgers tax fund?
No, I don't believe so.
Mayor, Judy, you didn't cover or talk too much about our contracts with the visitor center
Oh, okay.
and the recommendation that we had on the visitor center, so I don't know if you want to cover that.
We're going back to Department 165. The visitor center, we have included, the contract amount at 158,650. I know during the pandemic, they had been closed down, but I believe, they're gonna open up, right? At some point?
Yes.
And so we put the cost of the contract back into the budget.
And Mayor and Council, during the pandemic, when they were closed down, they didn't bill us for those services. You know, they did provide services in response to, you know, informing people about the COVID conditions and whatnot.
Right.
We wrote that into our CARES grant, and we did, you know, make them whole on that as well. So we did pay them back for that. Correct, Judy?
Yes, we did.
So, you know, right now, as we move forward with the Wingfield House and, you know, developing those assets, we're going to enter into some conversation with them about, you know, how do we transition into that type of a model as far as visitor center and, you know, kind of rethinking our process and how we use the Billy the Kid and the Wingfield and the current visitor center all working together.
Yep. Yeah, we've discussed it a lot, so yeah. I agree with that.
Is it getting a lot close to a quitting time, Mayor? Seems like there's been a lot of information. Are you guys good to continue going?
Whatever these guys want to do. Go on,
Keep going is what I say.
because we'll be having another meeting in the other room here shortly.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I just had a quick question related to this, but when we came back, we had, and I may have, on pages 41 through 43, there were correction fees from, and I don't think we discussed that. We went right into the, right over it into the next item.
I thought y'all did it while I was out, so I didn't say anything. The correction fees, Judy, on page 41.
I don't think the mic was on. I didn't hear the question.
The correction fees on page 41.
Through 43.
Uh-huh. Did you have a question?
I don't believe we discussed it, did we?
Yes, we did, but I can go over it again. No worries.
She made a brief statement about it, but
Oh, well, as long as we're okay with it, I'm fine.
no.
Go ahead and touch on it again, would you?
Sure. So the correction fees is used to accumulate fines that are assessed by our municipal court. And some of them are used for our benefit, such as the actual correction fee. We use those funds to house our prisoners if she does give a sentence to be served at the detention center. There are also some court automation fees that are collected in this fund and some education fees. The court automation and the education fees are actually reverted back to the AOC, and I believe Tim was talking about how these funds are
Divided
housed
into
in a funding, I guess, pool, that we can actually apply to get reimbursed for some of our costs.
Thank you.
I think when she talked about it, she talked about them being more of an in and out.
Yeah.
Because those really, you know, the courts collect them and then they send them out. And then we have to reapply for them out of a grant fund.
Yep. Street fund?
I'm surprised that, you know, the corrections fund stays healthy up here. Most organizations, that's an area that always has to be supplemented just because of the care of prisoners and whatnot, but it seems to be, you know, pretty manageable up here. That fund oftentimes ends up in arguments between the sheriff's office and the municipalities because of whose responsibility it is to care for prisoners and when they, you know, transition them over. So I'm surprised that doesn't seem to be an issue up here. Right, Ron?
I agree. That's very contentious.
So moving on to municipal street fund, number 216. If you want to go there. This is where the gas tax is collected. However, as you've seen the monthly report, it's consistently decreasing. And they also book revenues from repaving of street cuts when people are tapping into the systems and different things like that. So you'll see some revenues budgeted. However, the majority of this fund is subsidized by the general fund. And you'll see a $1.4 million influx to balance the budget. Moving forward to some of their
Judy.
expenditure.
Judy,
Yes?
so why do you repeat the street cuts with two different line items? What's the difference in that from the 10 to the 50 if they're both under paving cuts and excavations?
Let me get the name of that account because it's two different. I think some of them are internal, meaning that some of our own street cuts that the village does versus external like P&M.
Okay, that explains it.
And I think ours is the lower one, and the outside is the higher one.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on to personnel, there's actually 13 FTEs in this budget. And let me look at some of their expenditures. I believe, with the exception of the street materials, I'm not seeing any big increases.
Judy,
The other thing that,
didn't we have a frozen position in that department?
we have a vacant one. At the time that I did this was back in, around the 1st of April, there was a truck driver that was vacant.
Is that the one we're
Yeah.
having difficulties filling?
Yes, sir.
Oh, there's Josh.
Josh, did two vacant positions in that department? Truck driver and supervisor?
It's actually heavy equipment operator. We don't have our truck driver and our heavy equipment are in the same, so it'd be heavy equipment operator.
And what about the supervisor?
And the supervisor's been frozen.
Ron?
Still frozen.
So we actually only have 11 people here right now.
Ron?
So, Josh,
Yes,
on the
sir.
supervisor, is that your old position?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We should look to fill that position. It is a funded position. It just was frozen last year.
Yeah, it was frozen last year, so, okay.
So it unfroze when we did the budget hearing. We need to move forward on
Just to let
filling it.
him know, I guess, or didn't.
And then on the heavy equipment operator, that's the one, is that the one you have advertised already?
Yes, sir. That's the one that we have advertised in.
Okay. Okay. We need to move up forward then on the supervisor.
Josh, are you having a hard time finding an operator for the price, or what's been the difficulty on that?
Is the operator is because we no longer have our truck driver, but the difficulty's been finding somebody with a CDL driver's license.
And Mayor, Manager Dodge, one of the other issues we've had with that, we've actually tried to hire a couple people, and at the last minute, they back out because of lodging also.
Lodging. Yeah. Is that a pretty high-paid position?
It
Should be on your other
It's
sheet.
1586.
Probably another one of those positions that we need to have a conversation, just so that the rest of the council knows. Right now, I'm working on some spreadsheets with the pay plan. And, we're going to be looking at how that pay plan works and then presenting it. One of the things I hadn't talked about, Mayor, but what we may consider moving forward is we've tied some of those incentives like the longevity and the service credit to an ordinance. And what we may consider doing is doing that by resolution so that it's, it moves a lot easier than, actually writing it into law. And, Judy has budgeted for those, but I intend to come back with a proposed ordinance revision as, I've met with a couple of counselors and that have been working with a pay plan and introduce those items. But some of these positions that we're having difficulty with, we can talk about, a recruitment type of incentive when we are running into those type of problems. So, now that Cheryl's back, we'll push forward on that and make sure we got some recommendations. Ron, that's probably an agenda item that we need to ask for permission to publicize. The changes to the personnel ordinance in regards to, the longevity and the service credit and the pay plan with recruitment incentives. I think that's a common theme on a lot of these entry-level positions that we're going to be running into, so.
Yeah. Because even Cornerstone is paying 15 or a little bit over.
Yeah, but we were looking at all the, depends on what somebody's looking for. He was talking about the millennials are looking at hourly and then the benefits and insurance and all that. So I guess we need to reevaluate that whole, like I
Well,
said.
I was taught, you look at the benefits because that's part of everything, but nowadays that's not what's important. It's right now. What am I going to bring home right now?
One of the things that, I think the mayor and I have had conversations on is, some of the way that some of this economic stimulus is handled, in this, my opinion, I'm speaking for myself, I think it causes inflation. And that's what we're seeing with all the projects, we're seeing with material increased prices. And sometimes if it's too much injected into an economy, all it does is, push up that demand.
Yeah.
And if the supply's not there, that causes price increases, and which in turn causes inflation across the board.
Right.
So, I think, some of the decisions that are being made, there's a longer game that's being played, and, it's pushing up prices. And we're seeing those impacts on the local level. And, it's an economic term that they call cost shifting. And, oftentimes it's not, people wanting to make political decisions at a level, they make those type of policy decisions that drive up prices. And then at the local level is where you have to, pass that cost on for the cost of doing business to the consumer. And that's, that's where it impacts the local, governments and having to make those tough decisions. So that's just, my opinion, but I think that's one of the things that we're facing is inflation.
I agree, 100%. What time's the Red Bull shots? I agree, you're absolutely right, and that's what we're facing, so we're gonna have to evaluate.
What do you think, Judy?
No, I totally agree too. And with the stimulus money, you hear, we were on the, I don't know where we were at. Were we on the municipal clerks conference where one of the mayors, I guess from a small town, she was talking about how the restaurants want to open, but that they can't find anybody that wants to work because the unemployment that people are getting outweighs working. So, I think there's a lot of businesses that are having a hard time trying to motivate their employees to come back to work. So,
Well, we were told, and I don't think it's super secret, that as of May 1, that if they're gonna go back to that requirement of people to go out and apply for jobs. And if they're offered a job, they're off.
Well, thank you.
Yep, but that's what they just discussed.
That's the way it was before, and I get phone calls that say, yeah, show up tomorrow, and
They'll
No.
show up. Yeah.
they wouldn't put me down.
Yeah.
Then they start the game with saying, they call, say, are you hiring? Oops, never mind, I'll call someone else. Till they find 3 people that say, no, we're not hiring. They say, no, I'm not hiring, can I get your name and number? Can I put you down?
So I see that it's at the 3 o'clock mark.
Are y'all want to go on?
I thought the meeting was.
Yep, let's go on to the next one.
You can't.
Was it advertised till 3 or what, Ron?
No, it wasn't, we didn't have we just had 9 AM. We didn't have a closing date on the,
Closing time?
no.
Well, that's scary.
You're good till 11:59. And then you can swear in the judge.
Yeah, that's where the judge is.
Well, that's not till Friday night.
Okay, so we on to recreation fund?
With it. I got bad
Yes.
tax.
Bad
Yes.
debts?
We're up to the special recreation fund. This is where the WIBIT is housed. And also you'll see 2 other departments for the split of the revenues at the conclusion of a season. You'll see, WIBIT department is 151, and then the watershed is, 205, and then the Parks and Rec is at 155. So right now, currently, we do have some revenue projections if we open up the WIBIT, and we do have some, funds for salaries and for some operationals, but I'm not exactly sure. They're few and far between because I wasn't sure if we're gonna open or not. So if we are, we can make some additional changes if we need to.
I think we need to plan on it with, doing the smaller features.
Okay,
Because the concession is already open down there.
I will get with Rodney to fill in any gaps where we don't have any amounts.
Okay?
And then the next one, which is 218, this is all gonna be a rollover. I don't know, of any new grants. I know we have new legislative appropriations, but, once I get the signed agreements, then I'll put those into the budget. So right now, there's 0 amounts budgeted in this fund. So if we move on to the next one, you're looking for fund number 219, which is the RSVP grant fund. And as you can see, we are recording that approved 75,000.
Mayor, Counselor Eby's informing me that the meeting schedule did say till 3.
No, that you sent out to us, that I got.
Oh.
But it doesn't say it on that. It's obvious. But I scheduled something, I gotta go to.
Okay.
So I thought,
we had some discussion about going till 3 o'clock.
you guys won't miss me.
Went on the notice or
Susan won't miss me.
He just wanted to let everybody know that he needs to, he has another meeting he's scheduled, so he's going to take off.
Okay.
Can we do this here?
Yeah, we can do it here.
So there is that new 75,000 federal grant, and then, of course, the state is gonna kick in their 35. So the total grants in this fund are 110. This actually, department will actually house one full-time person, and it will absorb a portion of Anthony Montes's salary. and we will allocate that on a monthly basis. We talked about some of the amounts this morning with Anthony, the 10,000 for the stipends, which is in Department 219090 in their contractual services. Plus he has some recognition and some other expenditures for travel and equipment rental. And then when you move on to Department 091, you'll see the actual cost of the personnel. And he also has some other operational amounts in the line items.
Mayor and council, on that position, that's one of our only grant-funded positions. In accordance with our personnel policy, when the grant goes away, the position goes away. But what we have let that employee know is that we'll give her first right on any positions that she's qualified for in-house that may be vacant. So that, you know, we just don't lose a good employee, or, you know, that gives her a little bit of security as well.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Think the grant will ever go away?
You know, it's hard to say. I've seen where they've fluctuated. And
Right.
sometimes they've been threatened to be taken away,
Okay.
those programs, but, you know, just to give that employee some peace of mind.
Does she get our benefits?
I think she gets half.
How's the benefits handled, Judy?
He's, the grant is actually paying for full benefits.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Is that Amy?
I don't know if she took them, but I can't remember. But she was offered them.
Is that Amy?
No, Debbie.
Or what's her name?
Debbie?
Debbie.
Amber?
No, Amber at the community center.
That's Amy.
Amy, Amber is, yeah.
At the
she's a
community
full-time
center.
Position, and, yeah, it is Amber. Running
We have a bunch of new ones. I don't
it.
remember.
Yeah,
I know it's not Maggie.
It's Bill McCarty's.
yeah, grandmother.
Any questions on any of the new grant or the grant amounts? The next fund that you'll see in your packet is 223. This is the DWI grant. Bill hasn't got any award letter, so this fund is actually budgeted at zero at this point. Once I get the notice of grant award, then I'll actually put the amounts in. As we move forward to grant number 297, this is the forestry grant. And I know they do have a legislative appropriation, but again, I don't have the final paperwork. And there are some amounts included in this budget for, I believe, their telephone and contract services. So I'm not sure if Dick Cook is on, but I think this is for thinning some of the village properties, if I recall right.
Are you talking about the 50,000 from,
No, the 30,000 in Fund 297 forestry grants.
yeah, that was part of those rollover funds that we got from administrative fees in the past that we kind of use as a contingency fund in case we have something come up
Oh,
that we need to do.
okay. So they're just budgeting some funds in case there's something that needs to be thinned, I believe. Other than that, the next funds are the 300 series, and those are all based on rollovers. So you won't see any budgets at this time. These budgets will actually be included in the first budget adjustment in after the first quarter. So at this point, they're all zeros for our presentation today. So if you keep on moving forward through all the
Judy.
300,
Judy,
Yes?
before you move,
Yes?
out of the 300s, on the courts, how are you handling that grant and then the NMFA issuance? How are you gonna book that?
so there's a project fund number 306 where I'm keeping track of the construction proceeds. And if you look at the current year budget, you'll see that right now, there's construction proceeds at 5.7 million plus the 162 for a total budget of 5.8 million. And then as we start doing the work, you'll see it being expensed out of that same account. So if you turn the page and look at account number 306-025-53,000, you'll see the cost of construction at 5.8 million.
Yeah, but what happened to that additional grant money that Ron,
It's in the legislative appropriation.
yes,
It's also included in that fund. If you look at 306-000-41030, you'll see in the current year, there's a budget of 162,855, and we've already expended 77,000 of that and gotten reimbursed on that.
so that's carrying over as well, what's left over?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. And just to FYI, Fund 312 is going to be the Community Development Block Grant. So you'll actually see in the current year, the grant award and our match as a transfer in, and then you'll see the construction cost of the actual lines at 1.6 million. And again, at the end of June, once we close out the fiscal year, any balances left over will be rolled over into fiscal year 22 for this fund. So moving forward, if you go to the 400 series, these are our debt service funds. And the first one that you're going to be looking for is fund number 403, which is our GRT revenue bonds. These are actually paid from the general fund, and they're secured or pledged by GRT revenues. So the annual debt service payment for this particular issuance is $271,000. And then you'll see on the next page, principal totals 165,000 and interest totals 106,900. So it's an in and out, so it eventually washes out on that bond.
Judy, are we falling behind on our spending on these?
No, we actually got caught up. We did have some pretty big payments on the Alto Plant 3 remodel or rehab. So we're back on schedule. We are actually spending down, let me get the series we're working on real quick. Hold on, just 1 second.
And, Mayor, on some of these projects, I think that one of the things that we need to consider is those material delays that we're seeing. And,
Yep.
as we move forward, we may want to, purchase a stockpile of material. That way, that's not going to be an issue that holds us up.
I thought we had already decided we were doing that.
I think we talked about it, but I think we need to make sure that we follow through with that.
Is everybody
So we're
following what he's talking about?
Yeah, I thought that was on JUB, and we gave them that 60 or 90 days ramp-up
Right.
deal to get materials.
To go ahead and purchase pipe, if we can get a hold of it, go ahead and buy a bunch of it.
Where are we at with that, Adam?
I get all my meetings mixed up sometimes.
Ron, do you remember?
Yeah.
I thought we had already said move on that.
Mayor, Manager Dodge, yes. We had talked about it in JUB about moving forward and getting a stockpile. Our vendors are out till at least the middle to the end of July.
We might look at the projects that we have coming up, not counting the, town and country, because the contractor's going to be purchasing that material, but we may look at the upcoming projects and then project it out,
Yes, sir.
And What's the actual cause of the material delays? You talked about it being the resin production?
Yes, sir. It's the lack of resin to make the actual PVC pipe.
Do we know if they're rectifying that problem, or is that problem gonna get worse, or do we have any idea?
Manager Dodge, I'm hoping it gets better. All the vendors and all my suppliers that I've talked to, they're saying the same thing, but they do not have any answers talking to the manufacturers at this time.
Well, it just gets into that whole commodity purchase discussion that we're having with P&M when they have, the increased demand, and then, they ramp it up, and before you know it, is it a gouging issue or whatnot? And that's what we have to be careful with, and, they're just pushing up the cost, and who's benefiting from all this injection of financial stimulus into the economy.
On some of these projects, we may need to encourage the contractors to buy it early, but we're gonna have to structure their draws where they can afford to do that, which I think would be worthwhile.
And I think they, the way that it's currently structured, they can do the purchase of the material and then storage on site. I think it's more of causing that lag in the ramp-up period once we do the award, just on town and country. But if we purchase the material and have it on scene, on site, then, they can purchase it and replace ours, and we can provide it to them, something like that.
And Mayor Crawford, Manager Dodge, one of the other things that the suppliers were also explaining to us is there's not a shortage, of course, but the cost of the actual metal for fittings and everything else is like you said, the price gouging is fixing to go up also.
I just bring it up because, that may be a barrier on us spending down as we move forward, and I think we've got to be careful with that. And, the bond ordinances that are related to this, right, Judy?
Yes, so we are currently working on the Series 2018 Geo Bond Series. We have left to spend $819,000, and we have until December of 21, this December, to expend those. But going forward on Alto, we should be probably expending it within the next few months. And then on Series 2019, we have 1.3 million to expend, and we have until December of 22. And then on the Series 2020, we have 1.4 million, and we have until December of 2023 to expend those funds. But with Town and Country getting started, and some other projects, we should be in good shape and back on track.
Yeah, and the problem that I have with the Town and Country, not getting started to delay, with a 3-month delay, is it pushes us so far back that if we run into weather days in the end of the year, we may not meet threshold for the next application. So, that's what we have to have the project closed out before the next application opens up, or else we're not qualified to reapply.
Yeah, so that'll knock Pine Cliff out.
Yeah, it'll knock it out for the next year. But, I think, one of the things that we can continue to do is, we've had the project manager in the meetings and just keep them informed as to where we're at. And oftentimes when they see that we're experiencing those type of delays that are beyond our control, we can apply for a waiver on threshold, and, usually they're pretty good at working with us. But I think we've demonstrated to them that we've, moved this project pretty well in comparison to other communities. And they actually changed our funding allocation that goes to the state. They moved us up a year because we were so far ahead of all the other communities. So I think when we work with them and they're meeting their financial obligations of spending down, I think they'll work with us, but we just need to do everything we can to make sure the projects are staying on track. And if there's ways that we can, purchase some materials to ensure that we keep on track, we just need to be aware of that.
And store it securely. And that's why we need the other person in project management.
And I told Adam that he told me he doesn't have storage, and I said, there's a Horton complex, you can stick it in the hallway.
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna have to do is just start putting bundles of pipe in the hallway of the Horton.
Okay.
Then he said
If
that we
you
don't
wanna
have the
move-
easement to go in that door, so I'm just kidding.
The next fund is Fund 450, which is the NMFA debt or NMFA loans. Right now, we have the loan for the fire trucks and for the convention center remodel coming through this fund. We don't have anything set to pay for magistrate court because it'll be paid out of the capitalized interest accounts that we had at issuance. So this fund is actually a wash too. Moving on to 499, the geo bonds. Those are
Judy,
paid from our property.
Judy, just on that, Mayor and Council, I think we've explained this a couple of times, but on that fund, with the finance authority, they actually send the proceeds to the trustee, which is usually the Bank of Albuquerque or whatnot. So it's really gonna be a numbers transaction for us and not a paper transaction. So, you know, the payments don't flow through us, they're sent to the trustee, and the trustee is gonna disperse those, correct, Judy? We'll have
I believe so. I'll get monthly statements showing me where the monies were distributed, and I'll book it off of those statements.
So I just wanted to make sure that we're clear on that, because we don't actually see the money coming through our coffers.
Moving on with Fund 499. This is all the payment of the GEO bond, principal and interest payments. They're secured by the 1.5 mil on property tax. So those are the property tax amounts based on the last valuation, and the total annual debt service would be $776,000. So again, any funds that are left over at the end of the fiscal year will just be rolled over to pay for the next year's debt service fund. So moving forward, we're getting into our enterprise funds. And the first one that we're gonna be looking at is number 502, which is the utility fund, the water and the sewer fund. And as we look at revenues, we kept them very conservative at 5.6 million. If you look year to date, we still have 2 months of billings left to go through. So those figures will actually, year to dates will go up. But overall, it's a pretty conservative revenue estimate that we should be able to meet in the current fiscal year. Going forward, it's broken up by a few departments. They have the water billing department, which is 209, and then they have water production, which is 210. And then they have RJU administration, which is 212, and then the water distribution, which is 220. For our presentation, we'll start at 209. You will see a reduction in the amount of FTEs. So we went from 3 FTEs down to 2. We didn't fill Mr. Jones's position. We felt like with 2 operators or utility clerks that was enough. Plus, we could actually, if they were really busy, we have 2 of my staff accountants actually cross-trained to receive utility accounts, handle questions about account issues. So we've been cross-training in order to fill in any gaps if there are any, if somebody needs to take a day off or something. So that's why you'll see that personnel went down with the exception of the retirement. There are a couple retirement pays that are being offset. That's why it looks like it actually went up, but in reality, we did get rid of one FTE. Other than that, with the exception of our merchant fees, we're seeing that more people are paying online through our website. So each time somebody runs a credit card or something, we are charged for that processing fee. So we have actually increased those fees up a little bit. But other than that, that budget is flat.
Judy, I have a question, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am?
On the retirement pay, is that like paying sick and vacation and all that kind of stuff? Okay.
Yes. And let me get, I believe there's 3 people, but let me double check that will be eligible to retire. But let me get those figures. I'm a little stuck, so I'm not sure.
So if they weren't gonna retire, would we just?
Then that, we wouldn't use that money and it would just be not expensed against and it would just go back to cash balance.
For next year?
Yes. I got kicked out of my connection, so hold on one second.
That's a lot of money for sick pay and vacation.
For 2
Look
people.
at that, at the water,
Who's the other
the
one?
rating on that admin aid and water.
Well, that
Because
can-
this is for the coming year, so this is for 3 people that could possibly retire.
Have that much, because I thought we had a cap on vacation and sick, but I think it's just vacation, we have a cap.
So if they do retire, they do get their sick leave paid out too.
Yeah, there is a cap on both, on sick and on vacation. The vacation's at 260 and.
Yes.
The sick leave is capped at 1,600.
1,560, yes.
That's, yeah.
1,560?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was up. For some reason I was thinking 1,600, but
So there are
40 hours off.
3 plus and 3 employees that are eligible, plus there is also, and I'll have to do this, Mayor, like you asked me, a reserve in case we pay for performance also. So I will separate those out so I can give you the amounts.
Can a person that's gonna retire, instead of getting a lump sum, say, okay, I'm going to work until that, I'm gonna keep on the payroll until that time is
Yes.
out. And then when all of my stuff is done, then I'm gonna retire.
Yes.
Can you do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
We've had some that wanted to pay it out in 2 different fiscal years that they went ahead and left. But if it cost the village money, we said no.
They can request to do that, but they can put in a request to the village to do an early
I was
retirement.
just wondering, because that's how P&M did it.
Yeah.
Tom retired in February, and he quit getting a paycheck in June.
But they stop accruing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
Right. But it's just, you just get every 2 weeks you get a paycheck.
Yes.
Yeah,
But you still have benefits?
Yeah.
Yes.
You should be.
Yep, we still have benefits. Thank you. I was just wondering if we did that as well.
I think the last one we did that was with our previous HR director. She proposed to take that option.
Okay,
But they have to request it. We can't force them to do that.
Right.
So
And there,
if there are any.
there is a sellback and, option, and it hasn't been entertained for a while. But, to me, and I think Judy and I have talked about it, it's really not beneficial to us. Because what ends up happening is they sell back it's a 2-for-1 sellback, but then they turn around and they accrue back up. And, unless you're on a strict clock system, that really doesn't work.
no, and we've been through that already, and so we were telling them they had to take their stuff.
Let me ask one more question. If a employee opts to continue to get paid until their time is over, they're sick and their vacation, can we replace that? Do we replace that job, or do we have to wait till that employee totally is not there? That paycheck is not going to that employee?
It depends if you have another position funded.
Yeah.
But the FTE position, like, for instance, Judy's budgeting for those liabilities right now. So if we're to enter into that agreement, then we would pay from that liability, which would in turn vacate that position to be funded.
It just looks like to me in some things that could really hurt the rest of the employees because they're short
Workload.
one person and, okay, I was just.
They would have to request it, and then we would have to make sure that we could fund it and that it was beneficial to us.
Right.
It would also depend, are you just paying for like 1 month, maybe 2 paychecks? Or is it like you're gonna pay 6 months?
Right,
That could affect it too. It just depends.
okay.
Sometimes it's beneficial to us.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Right, it is. Not gonna elaborate.
Because 260 hours, that's 6 weeks almost, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Or you
6
have.
weeks that they could get paid out. So depending on how much sick leave they have, it could be some time that they're on the books still.
But we do evaluate those
Sure.
when they come up.
Okay,
It is a lot easier to see your facetiousness in person than other than the radio.
yes.
But it's good that this is budgeted for. Oftentimes they don't
Yeah.
budget for it. And then you end up in that position, you have to freeze the
Yeah,
position, and then it really impacts the departments.
I was just very, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Because that could be very well impacted.
Other communities don't do that, and that's one of the audit findings that they end up with is unbooked liabilities.
Got it? Makes sense.
Right, Judy?
Yes? Okay, so we're gonna move on to 210. This is water prediction, and let me get the FTE numbers. They have 11 full-time equivalents in this budget. And it looks like, let's see. I don't, there's some increase in professional fees, and also in,
Saw utilities jump up also. Well, no, it's saying 400,000. That year-to-date keeps throwing me off.
That's where, we have a couple of vacancies there, Judy, is that right?
at the time that I was doing that, it was one of the chief plant operators was vacant. I believe that was when Gary Goss retired.
Correct.
Oh, is Randy on the line? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay, and then there's a couple of projects in there, so if you want to start with the change in professional fees, Randy? Maybe?
Which one is that, Judy?
502, 210.
Under 520,
52006, did you hear that?
Ron,
Yeah, that's professional fees?
Yes. Our professional
Professional
services.
services.
Okay, let me see.
it's 106,000.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, that's gonna be,
and some of them are,
60,000 is for emergency well repairs. And then, 16,000 is for the dam surveys, and that number could go down since Sauter Miller is, starting to give us a better price. And then, we have 30,000 for, tank inspections.
That's it.
And then that's why that number went up.
And what's the franchise taxes? Is that on antennas or something like that that we just haven't booked yet?
So that's based on the revenues. In the ordinance, it allows us to charge a franchise tax of 5% to the water and sewer. So it's 5% of the revenues. Yeah, you caught me. I forgot to put those numbers in.
And that's for admin fees and things like that?
This is actually separate from the admin fees. It's an actual tax within the ordinance, that it says, we're supposed to assess. It's like the one that P&M pays
Yeah,
and I believe Windstream.
yeah. TDS, all those guys.
They're getting
Yes,
a
there
better
you go.
deal than us.
Yeah, they're paying.
They're not paying 5.
This is what I remember, P&M, right? Or was that Windstream? I forgot one of them went down to 3.
Yeah.
Maybe in Windstream because of the infrastructure improvements and.
When we missed a year on P&M.
That's right. I remember that.
Okay?
And I know there's some projects in their outlay.
Correct.
Oh, can you start, on the 53 series, Randy? Do you have some equipment / vehicles?
Yeah, we actually put in again for a service truck, and that came out to like $31,594. And that's to replace, some of the older trucks. And we didn't put in for any last year, and I think the year before. So we're looking at one truck for Plant 4. And then we're also putting in for a utility truck with a crane. Because the vehicle that we have now is, I believe it's a 2002. And it's got a lot of miles on it. And we do pull a lot of pumps from the pump houses, and some of them are pretty heavy. So the crane that we have now is kind of limited, so we're trying to upgrade. And we think it's a good investment because we would be able to do a lot of stuff in-house and not have to, bring in a crane truck to pull it.
How much is that, Randy?
That one came out to 140,143. That's what the truck and the construction crane. And you know, it's got the other options that come with the truck also, but.
And then you have some projects, totaling 190,000. Can you go over those?
Sure. We put in for, since security is such a big item, we still believe in trying to put in for electric gate to control the amount of people coming in and out of the plant. So we still believe that's a really, really important item. And then, since the COVID, my office is basically just a utility room since Karen and I moved apart, you know, for distancing purposes. So we would still like to build an office inside of the plant. We did make a lot of room and cleared a lot of area where we could build like an office for the chief plant operator and for myself. And then that came out to about 50,000. And then we're still trying to get the area paved around the plant. And that came out to about 100,000.
Now, when you talk about pavement around the plant, is that plant 3 or plant 4?
Plant 4.
Okay.
Plus, we were trying to do it in-house, you know, with the streets department, you know, if that's possible to keep the cost down.
Plant 4 is by the dam.
Yeah.
It's grindstone. Yeah. Those basically are the things that we were trying to request.
The amount in the lease purchase, is that for the backhoe?
Yes, it is.
You're renting a backhoe?
For 4 years, and it's 25,000 per year.
Are you gonna pay to purchase that equipment, or are you gonna just turn around and roll it into a new rental?
Well, our first I believe we're gonna keep it. You know, since we don't have that many miles on it and we keep it in pretty good shape, you know, I believe it'd be best to just purchase it outright at the end of the contract.
If I can get a copy of that,
Sure,
can you just send it to me, please?
no problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, we need to have that lease reviewed.
Okay,
We started a process where we'll have reviewed, I think, Judy, done your department take initial review and then Zach looks at it?
So most of these big equipment items are from Wagner, and Wagner uses the same lease over and over, and I know Zach has reviewed it. What we do is we look at the leasing of the equipment versus an outright purchase and what the benefits to the village would be. But since this lease was already started 2 years ago, we can take a look at it in that sense, or we can just move forward with it, whatever we need to do once I look at it.
Judy,
Yes?
I think, you know, part of the evaluation needs to incorporate the maintenance hours as well.
Yes.
And
Okay.
As we take a look at that, let's look at the hours that we're reporting and if the additional costs for, you know, overtime are affecting us, or is that hours that we're incorporating to the lease, is that a reasonable amount? I think that's where the questions were coming up. Right, Mayor?
Yes, sir. Because it was stated to us that we're wanting these leases because all the repairs and everything are free and they do the oil changes, and then we find out we have a separate contract that we're paying for the work and the oil changes, and so we're still paying for all of it. I just want to make sure that it's still smart.
Okay.
And Mayor Crawford, members of the council, I did email that lease agreement to John Underwood for his review. I haven't heard back from him yet, so.
Okay, if there's there's no further questions, we'll move on to Department 212. Joint Utilities Administration. This department has 3 FTEs. We also put a contingency fund in this fund. You'll see it in 502-212-51400, in the amount of 250. We use that in case there's any breaks or something happens in the joint utilities fund, so that we have an option to pay and move money around quickly. So you'll see that in there.
Okay, help me, joint utilities, who would this be?
Joint utilities is Adam's department. Isn't that right, Adam?
Mayor Crawford, so it's just, we're kind of the outcasts of the water and sewer utility. So it's my position, the water resource director, the public works director, and then Ashley Carbajal, our water resource specialist, are in this separate department. And then the programmatic costs for my program are included in this budget. And then if Adam has additional office equipment needs that don't come out of distribution, then we purchase them out of this one too.
Thanks, Eric. I was wondering where your department went into.
It's the haircut. The outcast.
And then as I was just texting him, they kind of share the admin aids, with water production and whatnot, so kind of all work together.
Okay,
They're all intermingled.
okay, that's fine.
He says outcast, but I think he's all intermingled.
So Eric, if you want to highlight, I know there's a lot of the accounts have reductions in them, but if you want to highlight any.
Sure. And actually, it's a question for you, Judy. So I'm assuming that for the internship program, we're reducing it from 2 people to 1 person's, and that's why the contractual services is down to 170.
I haven't touched any of those amounts. Where are you looking at?
So, well, unless it was moved somewhere different. So I know for John Schumacher and Associates, they budgeted 125,000, and then we had 90,000 for 2 potential internships with the NMSU program. They were budgeted at 45,000 apiece per year.
Something must have happened on Encode. The units didn't get transferred over, so there was 2 NMSU.
That's what I'm proposing.
Okay, I didn't make any changes, but I'll go put them back right. It must have been something. If you can just get hold of me tomorrow or the next day, and we can change them.
Okay, so Mayor Crawford and councilors, Tim touched on it at the beginning of the workshop, but we've had pretty substantial issues getting certified operators to come to Ruidoso, and really we need to focus in on a program to develop them internally. And so the Las Cruces utility has a program where they pay an intern to go to school at the NMSU Donna Ana Community College for their water technology program. It's a 2-year associate's degree, and when they graduate, they come out a level 2, both a wastewater and a water operator. And so, Judy, I just realized what was wrong. One of them is budgeted out of the water utility. The other is budgeted out of the wastewater. That's why it's only 45. So what we were going to do is look at getting 2 of these internship programs. One would be under the wastewater fees. The other would be under the water fees. But these, we would give them a stipend to go to school and pay for their school. And then for 20 hours a week, they would work for the village in both the wastewater and water utility. So we'd make sure that those interns get experience in both areas. And once they finish their schooling program, then we haven't sorted out the contract yet, but we're looking at either a 5 to 10 year contract for the 2-year program that they would have to work with us, or buy out the contract for all of the stipend that we paid them. So we're thinking that this will be a helpful way to kind of bring up some of those operators, in addition to us kind of modifying how we're working internally to make sure that we're always training up that lower class of operators so that we can bring them into the process and get them to learn how the plants operate and get them their levels, so we have that good stream of operators coming into our high level vacancies.
I think it's a great idea.
Yep. Okay, now then, the 170 is still all under contractual services, but we talked about Isaac, that he had one.
Yeah. So for that program, I budgeted $90,000, but it's 45 out of this fund, and then 45 is out of the wastewater fund.
Okay.
Eric, are you going to do it with New Mexico State, or are you still working with the eastern branch here?
So I want to work, so I'm going to work with ENMU to see if there's any type of remote classes that they could take through ENMU, but ENMU does not have a wastewater program. And so the only 2 universities in the state that have that is Santa Fe Community College, and then this Donna Ana Community College branch of NMSU. So, that I'm hoping that there's some of the classes that aren't excessively hands-on, where somebody can just come in and remote into the class and save themselves a trip.
Because that's going to be hard to work 20 hours a week here and go to school there.
And we'll see how it works out, but they would also have the weekends to be able to work. It's not just a weekday. So depending on their school schedule, we'll have to give them quite a bit of flexibility, but all of the water plants operate throughout the weekend, so we do have a lot of time to get them their hours that they need.
The other thing as well is they can also work the weekends and then go to school during the week.
How does lodging fill into that?
So the stipend has a budget to pay for the dormitory in Las Cruces. And so what I'm hoping is that we would be able to get local interest in the program. So, hopefully we can get somebody that's, say, out of high school and lives here in Ruidoso. And so when they're going to school, they could go down to the dormitories, but possibly come back and stay with their parents up here for the weekend or whatever their work schedule was.
If they're working 20 hours on the weekend, they don't get to sleep anyway.
I recognize that it probably will be pretty stressful, but I don't know. I think it'd be pretty cool to get your entire school paid for and you get paid to go to school. When you look at the stipend plus the 20 hours, it would be about like a full-time equivalency minus benefits.
And then you have a job when you get out of school.
Yeah.
Eric, would you be working through the counseling center at the high school? If they're going out of high school and into a 2-year program?
It's still kind of in its infancy. My first step was getting the budget numbers and proposing it to you guys. So we haven't kind of sorted out all of those details of how to incorporate into the high school system. But I was hoping to engage the high school, and I think working with the counselors would be a great approach to try to get some people that would be qualified for this program.
Yeah, I don't think most kids in high school have ever heard of a water operator.
No.
And, you know, we're hoping to be more involved in the community, you know, before, you know, COVID, you know, Randy was working with, I can't remember what grade they were, but there was a grade cohort that was going through and taking tours of the plant. And we're trying to be more publicly involved and open. So, you know, maybe over time, people can be more aware of those types of jobs.
Mayor and Council, you know, this is a issue that all the communities are facing, and we could develop a model, especially if we could work with a local university.
Yep.
And I think that this was something that can help all the communities. And, you know, as Las Vegas came down and did a tour, Maria from Las Vegas, it's, you know, Eric's counterpart up there, was expressing the same concerns.
Sounds like we need to have a professional day or a job fair or something where we highlight the call center, I mean, the telecommunication police officers, and, you know, we get people in, talk to them about what the opportunities are, actually take them on field trips, and then get them to actually see what they could be doing.
Kind of a career day.
That's the word.
Well, the college is trying to start a training program for electricians now. And they were gonna have a group that went around to all the area high schools telling them about this and the wind energy thing. So we might expand on that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And I've even thought, you know, I didn't propose it in this budget, but I've even thought in my mind, you know, maybe the water utility should look at having some summer interns just for the sake of introducing people to the utility. And maybe, you know, if you got a recent graduate and give them a summer job, maybe they'd be interested in utility work in the future.
Be a good idea.
So moving on, we've got the projects construction. So we've got several of our maintenance roads that we've been accruing to work on. So a lot of our gravel roads that go to these wells on Eagle Creek that we've been working on, and the surface diversion really were not built for this regular travel that we have to do to check and monitor this equipment.